PFAS, a name many of us have never heard, but one that has left its mark throughout every part of modern life. Nicknamed forever chemicals, they infiltrate our air, water, and soil, entering our communities and homes, bringing significant health risks and environmental harm worldwide. My name is Roland Slagius, and welcome to PFAS and You. Let's jump into the facts. To introduce us to PFAS, I spoke with Dr. Laurel Shader of the Silent Spring Institute. The Silent Spring Institute is a research-based organization aimed at discovering environmental causes of breast cancer. With over 20 years of experience into chemical exposure and public health, Dr. Shader has become a primary resource for information on these topics.
My name is Laurel Shader. I'm a senior scientist here at Silent Spring Institute. So my research at Silent Spring Institute focuses on exposures to everyday toxic chemicals such as PFAS or forever chemicals. We study exposures from drinking water, food, and consumer products, and we try to understand how those exposures can affect our health. One of my major studies is looking at exposures to PFAS in 2 communities here in Massachusetts. This is the Massachusetts PFAS and Your Health study, and we're focused on Hyannis and Ayer, Massachusetts. This work is part of a broader study that's being funded and coordinated by the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and ATSDR, which is the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. So PFAS is an acronym. It stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. It's the name of a family of chemicals. Right now, the EPA estimates there are over 14,000 different chemicals that have a chemical structure consistent with the definition of PFAS. PFAS are not a household name, but they're in many household products. So PFAS are added to consumer items to make them waterproof, greaseproof, stain-resistant, and non-stick. So think of Gore-Tex jackets, Teflon pans, or Scotch-guarded carpets and upholstery. Because of their many useful properties, they've been widely used in products since the 1940s. They're also have been called forever chemicals.
The same properties that make PFAS attractive for consumer products make them extremely dangerous when introduced into the environment.
The unique thing about PFAS chemicals is that they have many carbon-fluorine bonds, and these are super strong chemical bonds that basically don't break down. And so for that reason, PFAS chemicals can move around through water, through air. They've been found in every corner of the globe, even in polar bears in the Arctic. And unfortunately, they've also been found in the blood of people. So in addition to being highly persistent chemicals, some PFAS are also difficult for our bodies to excrete, and so they can stay in our bodies for years.
To know how this issue originated, we need to know where these chemicals came from and why they were allowed to spread. The story of PFAS began in 1938 when chemists experimenting with refrigeration at DuPont accidentally discovered the first commercially viable type of PFAS, PTFE, later branded as Teflon.
Whatever the occasion, a set of non-stick, easy clean Teflon 2 certified cookware makes a beautiful gift.
To more easily manufacture Teflon, DuPont developed PFOA, another type of PFAS, as a processing aid. Around the same time, 3M created PFOS, which was used to create Scotch-Guard, a popular stain and water repellent for fabrics.
It keeps ordinary spills from becoming extraordinary stains on virtually any fabric. Use Scotch-Guard Fabric Protector and let your cup runneth over.
Both PFOA and PFOS later became key ingredients in AFFF, aqueous film-forming foam, but we'll get back to that later. Throughout the 1900s, the public knew next to nothing about the existence of PFAS. But in the mid-1990s, that changed with the actions of one farmer. Helping us tell this story is Laura Spark, a program director at Clean Water Action. Clean Water Action is the nation's leading grassroots environmental organization, fighting for clean water across the US. Laura has over 25 years of experience as an urban planner, focusing on housing, poverty, and sustainability.
So my name is Laura Spark. I work for Clean Water Action. I'm the Environmental Health Program Director. What we're working on right now is PFAS, which is that acronym for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, which is a large class of chemicals that make things nonstick, waterproof, and stain resistant. And we're also working on children's exposure to toxic chemicals.
Laura first introduced me to the story of Wilbur Tennant and his animals. The story of Wilbur Tennant began in the 1980s with the sale of a large plot of land previously belonging to his family.
A farmer named Wilbur Tennant sold a plot of land next to his farm for what he was told was a non-toxic dumping area for DuPont. And shortly after, his cows started foaming at the mouth and dying, and there was something sort of weird foamy stuff floating in the streams on his farm.
I've taken 2 dead deer and 2 dead cattle off of this ripple right here. And they tell me the deer died with hemorrhaging disease. It was hemorrhaging disease, all right. The blood run out of their nose and out of their mouth. The EPA of the state of West Virginia is trying to cover this stuff up. But it's not going to be covered up because I'm going to bring it out in the open for people to see.
He documented these occurrences, along with other strange animal deaths, changes in water color, and substances floating along the water.
This is a lower pipe. You can see what's coming out of it. You can see what it's like here on the bottom of the bed. And this stuff comes on down this stream of water. What effect will this anti-substance solution have on the livestock?
Soon after, the Tennants pursued legal action against DuPont, determining their local landfill to be the source of the illness.
Nothing wrong with these things. I can call the West Virginia State Veterinarian, Doc Thomas, and the only thing he asked me is, do you have a good attorney? This is 153 of these animals that I've lost on this farm. And the state veterinary, Doc Thomas, he won't come up here to do anything about it. And every veterinarian that I've called in Parkersburg, they will not return my phone calls or they don't want to get involved.
Initially, the EPA refused to acknowledge that DuPont was at fault for the deaths. They blamed the Tennants and claimed that they were mistreating their cattle. However, the Tennants continued litigation.
He engaged an attorney, Rob Ballot, and in the course of discovery, they found out that both DuPont and 3M had in fact known that the chemicals were toxic to lamb animals, that they were getting into workers' blood, that they were causing worker illness, and they were getting out into the air and water surrounding the plant in Parkersburg, West Virginia, which is where Mr. Tennant lived. The challenge for the rest of us is they didn't tell anybody. They kept that information within the organizations. And when outside people began to suspect that there were issues, they didn't tell the truth. And they said that the chemicals were safe.
By the time these documents came to the public eye, the damage had already been done. Wilbur Tennant battled with neurological illness and cancer until his death in 2009. His wife succumbed to cancer only 2 years later. The same chemicals that plagued the Tennants and their animals have since been found in people around the world. Today, PFAS have become a widespread contaminant. Reports state that over 99% of people and 45% of public water systems in the US have some level of PFAS contamination.
So PFAS can get into the environment in a number of ways. So in communities close to chemical manufacturing plants like 3M or DuPont plants, there can be releases from the factories where these chemicals are manufactured or near industries that create PFAS-coated products.
In the case of Wilbur Tennant, these chemicals were dumped in the land neighboring his farm without care for the residents or wildlife that would be affected. Well, regulations on this kind of industrial dumping have strengthened over the last 30 years. PFAS can still escape manufacturing plants through a variety of means. When PFAS mix with wastewater or air streams, they can enter the environment unnoticed and disperse into local ecosystems.
More broadly, there can be contamination of groundwater from military bases, airports, and fire training areas because of these AFFF firefighting foams. And so groundwater around many of these fire training facilities has been contaminated by PFAS.
This source of contamination has become a major concern for many communities in Massachusetts. Over just the last decade, we've spent millions trying to fight contamination from these facilities. Additionally, PFAS are often used in firefighting gear as a flame retardant and thermal insulator.
Increasingly, we're also learning that the waste stream can also contain PFAS because PFAS are in so many everyday products. Once products are disposed of, the PFAS can leach out and end up in the environment. So for instance, PFAS are found in wastewater treatment plant effluent, discharges from septic systems, landfills. There's increasing concern about land-applied sludge as well, so the residual solids from wastewater treatment plants also contains PFAS. It's been a long-standing practice to add that to the surface of soils, and that can lead to contamination of agricultural areas and contamination of groundwater.
The presence of PFAS within the waste stream is especially frightening due to the resilience of PFAS and their resistance to many of our conventional treatments. The sludge that Dr. Shader mentions, also known as biosolids, have been applied to agricultural lands for over a century. Chemicals within these biosolids can be incorporated into crops grown on this land, threatening the safety of even organic foods. As for solid waste, high-temperature incineration has been shown to destroy PFAS, though poor control of the process can accelerate contamination through aerial emissions. All of these factors add up to an increasing level of PFAS in the blood of people and in our water systems.
I got interested in this kind of work because my sister, Cynthia, died when she was 26 of breast cancer. And at that time, we were told that it was just bad luck. She was actually diagnosed when she was 21, and they said that she was the youngest person to ever get breast cancer. As I dug into the research a little bit more, it became clear that it wasn't just bad luck, that actually non-communicable diseases, including cancers, neurodevelopmental illnesses, asthma, fertility issues have actually been increasing significantly since the mid-1970s. Childhood cancer has gone up 44%. According to the CDC, young adult cancer, but that's cancer from people from 15 to 39, has increased 34% from 1975 to 2020, whereas all cancers have just gone up 12%. So that's a huge increase in young people getting cancer. Doctors and scientists are telling us that environmental exposures to toxic chemicals are part of the reason why we're seeing a really significant increase in young people getting cancer.
While the conditions that result from environmental chemical contamination can vary greatly, many of them are caused through interactions with the endocrine system. The endocrine system is a complicated series of organs within the human body responsible for creating hormones, chemical signals that influence many bodily functions. Even small disruptions to this system can have severe consequences for your health.
PFAS can affect our immune system, so some of those effects can be immune suppression. For instance, children with higher levels of PFAS exposure produce lower levels of antibodies in response to routine vaccinations. There can also be autoimmune effects where the immune system is overactive, for instance, in ulcerative colitis. PFAS can affect our metabolism. It can change levels of cholesterol and triglycerides. They can affect the function of our thyroid, liver, and kidney. And they can also, at high levels of exposure, cause cancer.
Because hormones play a vital role in reproduction, pregnancy, and early development, interference from PFAS during these vulnerable stages of life can lead to severe consequences, especially for women. To better explain the effect of toxic chemicals within the female reproductive system, I invited Lily Marcelin of the Resilient Sisterhood Project. She's a lifelong community activist and organizer dedicated to racial and social equity.
I am Lily Marcelin. I am the founder and executive director of the Resilient Sisterhood Project. Resilient Sisterhood Project, RSP for short, is an organization I started in 2012 to address reproductive health issues that disproportionately affect women of African descent. Issues such as reproductive health issues and conditions such as fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, early puberty in Black girls, gynecologic cancers. You know, PFAS can have a tremendous negative or adverse health outcomes on the reproductive tract. In terms of like some of the diseases that I mentioned, such as fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, constant exposure to PFAS can lead or worsen some of those health issues. In terms of pregnancy, PFAS also can have severe health implications.
Oftentimes, the worst of these effects are seen in women during pregnancy.
If you think about someone who's pregnant, PFAS can potentially lead to hypertensive disorder. It can lead to issues such as preeclampsia. In thinking of gynecologic cancers, it can also, especially around ovarian and uterine cancers, PFAS also can affect those cancers. Research demonstrates that PFAS can affect the placenta in the pregnant woman. PFAS can also affect the birth weight of babies.
Throughout pregnancy, the placenta is an organ that provides nutrients and oxygen to the fetal bloodstream. Some toxic chemicals, including PFAS, have been shown to move past the placental barrier into the fetal bloodstream. This is extremely dangerous for the health of the fetus and for early development after birth.
Exposure to PFAS can also have the potential to affect the timing of puberty in girls, which can lead to early onset of puberty or even precocious puberty.
Because of the prevalence of PFAS in our houses and environment, we incorporate these chemicals into our bodies every day.
People can be exposed in different ways to PFAS. So when we're talking about drinking water, obviously we can be exposed to them through ingestion. PFAS can end up in the food that we eat, so the plants and animals that we eat can absorb PFAS from their surroundings. PFAS can end up in the air that we breathe in our homes, so some PFAS are volatile, so that means they prefer to be actually in air, and then we can breathe them in. PFAS can also end up in dust in our home, and we don't really think of dust as a way that we can be exposed to toxic chemicals. We think of it more as a chore to kind of clean up the dust, but dust is actually a place in our home where toxic chemicals can accumulate. If you happen to be a small child, you spend a lot of time close to the ground, you ingest more dust on average. Also, kids are always putting their fingers in their mouth, so there can be hand-to-mouth transfer as well. Children can be especially vulnerable because they breathe more air, drink more water, and eat more food per unit body weight. And their bodies are developing and they're more sensitive developmentally to toxic chemical exposures.
Despite the efforts made in researching this issue, there's much we still don't know about the effects of PFAS on the human body. What we do know for certain is that issues of chemical contamination, including PFAS, have a stronger effect on some communities than others. Joining us now is Sierra Brown of the Resilient Sisterhood Project.
I'm Sierra. I'm currently program coordinator with RSP, and I've been doing that job since January of 2024, so now like a year and a half. So RSP has a couple of core programs. One of those is educational advocacy and helping people understand a little bit more about the conditions and issues that we cover. So I do a lot of research for those types of things, whether it's making blog posts or social media posts. Another thing I do is a group called the Wellness Sisters, which is another one of our core programs. And the Wellness Sisters is a place for women to kind of gather and think about things, not through the lens of healthcare or scaring people into thinking this is the disease you're going to get tomorrow if you don't do these things, but kind of thinking about it through a more holistic approach. So we do things like walking groups or book clubs. And so that's another one of the programs I'm really heavily involved with.
Recent data shows that communities of color are more likely to share a water supply with many of these primary sources of PFAS. This is unsurprising, as for decades data has shown that these same communities suffer harsher effects of climate change and other environmental harm. This is called environmental racism and is largely the result of discriminatory financial and developmental practices in the past. One of these practices is referred to as redlining and was largely popular among lenders and investors during the 1900s. During this time, lenders began categorizing communities based on their risk level. However, many of these communities were solely judged on the race of its inhabitants. Due to this, Black, Hispanic, and immigrant families were often given worse loan rates or denied access to financial services.
Redlining affected the properties in which people could live. And so a lot of Black and brown communities, literally because of red lines drawn around areas that kind of put people in specific boxes of where they could live, where they couldn't live.
Development in these regions were slowed, as business owners and investors were steered away by the bank's judgment. By dividing communities based on the race of its residents, developers were also able to place landfills, airports and industrial sites closer to these devalued areas. Living in close proximity to these sites dramatically increases the risk of chemical contamination for these communities. This makes these communities more susceptible to health risks associated with these toxic chemicals. Additionally, toxic chemicals have also been found more prevalently in products marketed towards these individuals. Specially formulated hair relaxers, straighteners, and fragrances are among some of the many culprits.
There are a lot of these issues that mostly affect certain demographics of people, and those people often happen to be Black and brown people. Not to say they're the only people. Impoverished communities in general had those types of issues, but we see disproportionately Black and brown communities affected by these things because of some of the things I mentioned.
Massachusetts has largely become a hub for researchers and engineers looking to address the issue of PFAS contamination. Recent investments into public health have created an environment for action on these issues. One important study resulting from this is the PFAS and Your Health study conducted by the Silent Spring Institute.
The Massachusetts PFAS and Your Health study is what we call an epidemiological study. So it's a study that's being conducted in communities that have had a history of drinking water contamination. So our study is based in two communities, Hyannis, Massachusetts, on Cape Cod. Hyannis used to have higher levels of PFAS than any other public water supply in Massachusetts. Fortunately, the water system has put in place treatment to filter those PFAS out. The second community is Air, the town of Air, which is west of Boston, and PFAS also used to be contaminants in the drinking water supply, and they also have put in place treatment. So the Massachusetts PFAS and Your Health study is part of a broader study that's being funded and coordinated by the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and ATSDR, the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. And the goal for the study is to learn more about how long-term exposures to PFAS in drinking water can affect the health of adults and children. So in both of our communities, we had clinics set up where participants would come to provide blood and urine samples, and we collected body measurements such as height, weight, waist circumference, and blood pressure. We also administered a questionnaire to our participants. So we asked them about where they had lived and worked over time. We asked them about any health conditions or health history. And we also asked about their water consumption patterns, because part of our study is intended to evaluate long-term exposures over time. So we want to understand who lived in the community for a long time and might have had longer exposures to PFAS from the drinking water and shorter exposures if they had moved to the area more recently.
In Hyannis, this contamination was traced back to the local Barnstable County Fire Training Academy. In Ayer, PFAS was found at the Fort Devens military site. Nonprofit research, including by the Silent Spring Institute, as well as government investigations into military sites, largely prompted action to protect their residents against these chemicals. We are now outside the Spectacle Pond Water Treatment Facility, the second of two treatment plants constructed by the town of Ayer between 2018 and 2022. This facility, which went online in July 2022, services two wells, both on Spectacle Pond, using a granulated activated carbon filtration system. In these tanks sit layers of activated carbon through which well water is allowed to flow. As water flows through these tanks, contaminants such as PFAS, pesticides, and organic materials are absorbed into microscopic pores in the carbon and effectively removed from the water. Today, these plants treat over 2 million gallons of water a day, sourced from 5 local wells, and are effective in removing all traces of PFAS from water headed towards the homes of residents and businesses. However, these results come at a high cost. Together, Ayer's 2 PFAS treatment plants cost an estimated $12 million, funded through a combination of taxpayer dollars, military grants, and state and federal loans. These systems require ongoing maintenance, regular replacement of filtration material, and continuous water quality monitoring, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars each year just to keep them running. That's pretty steep for a town of fewer than 9,000 residents. It's important to note that these systems do not eliminate PFAS, nor do they prevent new contamination. They simply capture the chemicals from the water, storing them in filtration medium that still needs to be replaced. Despite its drawbacks, this is the best option we have for removing PFAS from local water supplies. Similar systems have also been used in Hyannis.
So research studies such as ours are really important because they can inform policy as well as to provide information for individuals and communities to take steps to reduce exposure. Last year, the EPA established drinking water standards for 6 different PFAS chemicals. And standards such as these are based on epidemiological studies in people as well as toxicological studies in animals that provide evidence for the types of health effects associated with PFAS and the levels of exposure. So our work to understand the health effects of PFAS can support drinking water standards and other regulations by the EPA and by state agencies to reduce people's exposure to PFAS. Our findings can also help people take steps in their everyday life to reduce their exposures to PFAS.
There's been a lot of recent attention towards the issue of PFAS contamination. This is largely due to increasing research on these topics, as well as pressure from individuals and NGOs.
I think that there has been a lot of current research and really influential papers that came out. One was in 2015, there was something called the Madrid Statement. A group of scientists came together and said, we must act on PFAS as a class. We can't keep going after individual PFAS chemicals. We need to act on the whole class, and really focusing on the fact that the whole class is persistent and that those that we've studied are highly toxic. We haven't studied all 15,000 chemicals because we can't. Another scientist named Ian Cousins came up with the concept of essential use. PFAS is used in lots of different things. Some of the uses are just unimportant, like PFAS is used for long-lasting mascara. We don't need long-lasting mascara. We can have short-lasting mascara or no mascara. So some of those uses we should just take it out of. Other uses are important, but there may be safer alternatives. So that might be a heat pump, that we now use a fluorinated gas as a refrigerant, but we could use alternative, safer refrigerants. A third category is what he would call an essential use. So something that is absolutely necessary for health, safety, and functions of society. So that might be a medical device, a heart implant. Those are things where the use is essential. There might not yet be a safer alternative. So we should continue using PFAS in that small category of uses, but should invest in research and development to find safer alternatives.
This would make it easier to regulate PFAS without interrupting the important technologies that rely on the chemicals. Alongside scientific research organizations, nonprofits such as Clean Water Action or the Resilient Sisterhood Project are one of the main driving forces in creating change on these issues of environmental harm. These groups are small enough that they can work closely with the communities that they serve, but large enough that with enough legal support can make real change around the world.
I think what we bring is issue expertise and political power. In terms of issue expertise, we spend a lot of time talking with scientists in this state, across the country, and with advocates in other states to understand what's already been done, what kind of language has been used, what obstacles people have faced in implementation. And I think the other thing is that we work with people who have been impacted by PFAS, who may be impacted by PFAS, and educate them and encourage them to reach out to their legislators and to demand a change.
We do a lot of work around communicating with the communities that we serve using social media. We organize conferences, symposiums, small and large workshops or trainings. You know, we also provide a lot of resources on our website. It's like a really resource-rich information for people to learn about PFAS.
Despite the many advancements in public understanding and action against PFAS, many states still do not regulate PFAS, and some, with regulations, do not enforce those regulations. While the fight against PFAS is still ongoing, there's a lot you can do to protect yourself and your community, as well as help the work of these NGOs. First of all, there are many steps you can take to decrease your exposure to PFAS. Reducing your use of non-stick, stain-resistant, and waterproof items is a good start. Otherwise, you can check the status of your local water supply and install a home filter if necessary. Beware of some packaged foods, especially microwavable popcorn and fast food containers. There are also many ways that you can support the NGOs that do this kind of work, such as volunteering, attending awareness events, and donating to these organizations. Reaching out to your legislator is also a great option, as it shows them that this is an important issue that people care about.
Talk to your legislator, talk to your state legislator. On toxic chemicals, everything's happening at the state level. And find out who your state legislator is. In Massachusetts, you can find out going to the malegislature.gov website, and there's a Find Your Legislator feature. You just type in your address. You can find the legislator's name and their contact information, their phone number and their email. And in terms of contacting legislators, you don't really have to be an expert on every aspect of an issue. What is really important to them is to hear why you care, how you've been affected by the issue, and why you're concerned. So just by way of example, I have a whole series of postcards that I gathered on a related bill that we're working on toxic chemicals in children's products. And we asked everyone just to put one sentence in about why they cared. And as just as you look at the letters and just kind of flip through them, it's really compelling to hear, I'm a mom, I'm a teacher who's seeing more neurodevelopmental diseases. My daughter died of cancer, my niece has cancer. You just begin to hear just a whole bunch of voices from your district of different people who have been impacted by the issue. And even just one sentence about how an issue impacts you and why you care, or what you're beginning to see, I think is really, really influential to state representatives and senators. So even if all you can do is send an email or write a letter or call just once, it actually has an impact.
Perhaps most of all, it's important that you be informed about these issues. As much as the industries try to hide it, those who are most impacted by issues of environmental harm are often the least informed.
Well, it's really important that community members are informed about the harm of toxic chemicals such as PFAS. So we make sure that they are involved and engaged and really learn about those chemicals, given the impact that they can have on their lives. I mean, this exposure can be quite life-altering.
I think it's really important to me because I think that I came from a position where I had the access to learn a lot of these things early on, and still a lot of things were surprising to me. When I first met Lily, for example, our executive director, she told me about fibroids and PFAS and all these types of issues, and I was really surprised because I had never really heard of them in the context of what she was telling me, and the large discrepancies, like 80% of Black women getting fibroids by a certain age. So I think that from there, I really felt empowered to be able to make these educational advocacy types of things and think about ways that I can help people to kind of come on the same platform, people to, take back their power.
This project was funded and supported by Middlebury College through their Projects for Peace program, along with help from WPI's Global Lab. Thank you to Professors Achiri Ismail and Stephen McCulley for supporting me throughout the creation of this film. Another big thanks to my production team, including editor and videographer Angel Disla and assistant videographer James Porter. Thanks again to all the experts and activists featured throughout this film for sharing your knowledge, as well as your continuous work in protecting our environment and health. And last of all, I want to thank you for watching.